I've mentioned in the past that I think one thing that really separates people who've learned English from native speakers is the use of contractions to the point where people who learn English typically aren't like using sometimes any contractions at all, versus native speakers are using contractions pretty much all the time if you really start listening for it. And so today we're continuing our look at contractions, this time taking a look at contractions that end with a have or just a v sound. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to your daily American English pronunciation show, which is Wake Up American. We are here Monday through Friday, typically between the hours of 7 to 8 a.m., unless we need to do it in the evening to carry you over in the morning to make sure that you can get in your 5 to 10 minutes of pronunciation practice for the day. And to guide you in this process, there is me. Hello, my name is Jeff. It rhymes with breath, which is one of the four keys to a natural sound American English, including placement, pitch, breath. Trying to weaken your consonant sounds, strengthen your vowel sounds. In fact, when we talk about contractions, that's part of the reason why. Because when you use contractions, what it does is it allows you to weaken a lot of your consonant sounds and allows you to get a little bit more breath coming through. Okay. These contractions can work in a variety of settings. Sometimes I see students, they're like, oh, but it's too informal or people don't talk like that. And no, we're missing the point. It's not about formal versus informal. This is actually going to, be used in professional settings, or casual settings as well. Contractions don't really have much to do with formality. Let's take a look at the phrases that we're going to be targeting. And again, I said phrases just to provide a little bit more context. That way you can hear what's happening around the contraction. This is really important because very often the contracted form is not the stressed part of your word, which means that we want to say these contractions light, we want to say them fast, and we want to say them a little bit lower in pitch. Let's take a look, for instance, at our first one here. So we see there've been several. And as we do these contractions, I want you to really listen carefully to make sure that you're not adding some extra syllables. Sometimes students think that they're using a contraction. They'll say like there've, but what they're really saying isn't there've. They're saying there have. Do you see how we're kind of adding an extra vowel in there? So it doesn't sound contracted anymore. So you want to watch out for that, okay? For most of these phrases, the stress is going to fall on the last word, which means that pitch-wise, we're going to go down, 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 and we're going to get weaker and faster. Okay, so for instance, our first one, there have been several. There have been several. Notice I'm not saying there have been several. There have been, there have been, there have been, there have been several. And you want to make sure you're going low enough on the been sound. There have been several. There have been several. Notice that in our next one, there's a couple places that are involving reductions, including the contraction, but see what happens with the U. So what you could say this next one is, where have you been? Where have you been? So instead of where have you been, which is also is fine, you can say that too, but it's very common to get that reduction. It's like where have you been? Where have you been? See how weak the consonant sounds are, and we just flow vowel to vowel. Where have you? Where have you? Where have you? Where have you been? Where have you been? Our next one, what have you? What have you? Or you could reduce to what have you? What have you? What have you done? What have you done? Or what have you done? What have you done? Either one of those again is perfectly fine in terms of reduction, but if you want the contraction, again, I would say what have you? What have you? What have you? What have you? Notice the lips don't need to do a lot of work. It's not like what have you? No. It's just what have you? What have you? What have you? Because we're trying to get the placement right. And you may be listening to this and be like, but Jeff, this is no one can understand that. This not even words what you're saying. But actually, on its own, I agree with you. It's not always going to sound very clear, but it's when you add in other words around it, your listener can start to put together the context in mentally. So it's not going to be too challenging for them. Okay. Anyways, our next one here. So what have you? What have you? What have you done? What have you done? What have you done? What have you done? And then done's going to pop off in pitch. So that's your movement. Low, 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 high. What have you done? What have you done? And our next one with when if, when if they not, when have they not. See, I'm not saying when of they. Oh my gosh, it'd be so hard to say that, right? Focus on the vowels. A, a, when are they? Are they? When are they? When have they not? When have they not? When have they not? See the pitch movement on they because it's your unstressed word right before your stressed word. So again, um, when have they not? When have they not? Our next one. So we get how, so instead of how have, just how ya, how ya. So again, you reducing to ya again. How ya, how ya, have you finished? Have you finished? Like a teacher may say it to a student, right? Like, have you finished so fast? Have you finished so fast? Have you finished? Have you finished? And our last one here, we have who, with the contraction again, have. So who. See how weak the V sound is? It's not who've, it's who've. Who we seen? Who we seen? Okay, let's run through all of these again. We'll say each of these twice. I want you to pay attention to the contraction. In addition to, vocab phrases that will be helpful for you, and also listen to my model. Okay? There have been several. Where have you? Where have you? Where have you been? What have you? What have you? What have you done? When have they? When have they? When have they not? How have you? How have you? How have you finished? Who we? Who we? Who we seen? Notice the difference between saying who we, and who we. Here, difference between who we and who we, and things like that. So again, we want to make sure that we're using the contraction for the sake of this exercise. Guys, if you're finding this helpful, one thing I've done, by the way, if you look at the video description notes, I've included a link to a previous live stream that we did talking about contractions, that time with the contraction L, like ah, you'll, whole, things like that. Okay. The last thing I will say as well before we head out today, if you're finding these things helpful, but you're like, man, I want to get a little bit more practice in on vowel sounds because my vowels aren't doing what Jeff's doing. Maybe instead of been, you're saying bean. Instead of saying don, instead of saying done, you're saying dawn. Like, what have you done versus what have you done? Maybe it's a short I thing. So, for instance, instead of saying finished, which is more standard, you may be pronouncing like finished, and things like that, where you're really blocking off breath. So, if you're interested in trying to study these concepts in a little bit more detail, we have a free video book. If you just go to YouTube channel, you'll see our video book. But if you want a paperback version or an ebook version of that with a bonus section, because I added a section on vowel sounds, you can go to fluentamerican.com to check out the textbook. All right, guys, at this point, I do need to get some sleep, but hey, thanks for hanging out with me. And if you're watching this in the future, I'm sorry I missed you, but hopefully you still find this helpful. We'll be back with more Wake Up American. Once more, my name is Jeff. Runs of breath. It's one of the 4 keys of natural sound: include placement, pitch, breath. Trying to weaken consonant sounds, strengthen your vowels. I will see you all later. I hope you have a good day. You have a good night and a good afternoon. Take care, guys.